they're coming in.
All right, while everybody is starting to come into the room, let's go ahead and get started. That way we can make sure we make the most of this time and this workshop. So just want to say hi, everybody. My name is Pili Keha. I'm with the After School Network, and I'm going to be your host for today. So I just wanted to remind you of a few items before our presenters get started. Please feel free to use the chat box throughout the session and keep yourself on mute while the presenter is speaking. As a reminder, a link to our conference agreements can be found in the chat box. At the end of the workshop session, the presenter will stay online for 20 minutes for question and answers. And also do not forget to fill out the evaluation at the end of the workshop today to get entered into our drawing for workshops and door prizes at the end of session. So thank you for being here today. And I'm just gonna take some time to introduce our panel. So first on our panel, is we have Heather Legik'I Powell. She's a Tlingit language teacher, the director of the Hutuyayati and family engagement specialist for Huna School District. Heather is currently working towards creating scope and sequence for grades pre-K through 12th grade for the Tlingit language with a team of language warriors, as well as creating a year-round cultural calendar. Heather currently helps to facilitate several summertime cultural camps around the state, helping to include culture, language, and traditional harvesting, as well as song and dance. Dr. Charleen Fisher-Salmon is currently the Fairbanks North Star Borough School District Federal Program Director and the chairperson of the Gwich'in Social and Cultural Institute of Alaska. She is a member of the Gwich'in community from Beaver, Alaska, and a lifelong advocate for the Dingi Shukia language revitalization. She has a BA in political science, Master of Education in Language and Literacy, and a PhD in Indigenous Studies from the University of Alaska Fairbanks. We also have Deanna Baier. She is a lifelong resident of Southwest Alaska, believes in family, community, and culture, and she has raised 3 children in the Alaskan bush, chasing bears from her yard, mushing dogs, migrating to summer fish camp, and enjoying the lifestyle of a close-knit group. Next, we have Shakshani Ish. He is the name he was given by his grandma that belonged to his great-grandparent. He also goes by Konrad Frank. He grew up in Angoon, where his father's people are from, while his roots through his mother's side come from Sitka of the Eagle Nest household. His history of experience includes a lot of work with culture and storytelling camps with Sea-Alaska Heritage, Tlingit and Haida Gold Belt Heritage, and recently with Perseverance Theater. He loves and misses working with students in person, but is ready for the next year to reconnect and build stronger relationships. Last but not least, we have Jessica Paris. She is the Department of Education Early Development Program Manager for Alaska's 21st Century Community Learning Center programs. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to you guys.
Great, thank you, Pili. So we're gonna just kick right off here, and thank you all. I want to say thank you to our participants who have joined us, and definitely feel free to write comments or questions in the chat that we can maybe mix in or that we can address during the question and answer period that comes after. But we'll begin with our planned questions. So if all of our panelists could begin by introducing yourself, to include your experience providing after school and or summer programming to students. And I'm going to have us begin with Charleen.
Also, letting the panelists, if you guys want to go ahead and introduce yourselves too, go ahead and do that.
Van Gwinzi, Shalaknai, Charleen Fisher-Oji, Beaver Gwatsan Idli, Gatanangwichi, Shi Dinjiju Kya, Jit Shojri Dajrai. Good morning, everyone. My name is Charleen Fisher. I'm from the village of Beaver, which is in the picture behind you, behind that beautiful view of the Yukon River. And my native name is Dajrai. and I live here in Fairbanks. I work at the school district as a federal programs director. I work with the wonderful and magnificent Julie Wild Curry, who leads the after school program and does amazing things with students all year long, including a wonderful summer program. And in addition to my experience here at the district, I've worked in rural Alaska at my home, and in Chalkitsik and in Circle for a little bit as from the Yukon Flats School District, and also taught here in Fairbanks at Hutchison. So very nice to be here, and look forward to speaking about a fun after-school program activities that we do.
Great. Thank you, Charleen. How about Shakshani Ish? Let's hear from you.
Yuk etutat takachuhan Shakshani Ish aya aksai lingit kainak Konrad Wanganins Konrad Frank Yukhatu Asauk Angun Daksati where Aklish Guhas Kaach Ish has Hastuani Akhish has Klane de Aklish Guhas de Shitan. Shakshani Ish, I grew up on my father's land and my grandfather's land, which are the Klane and the de Shitan. Angun Daksati, which was the land of Angun. My name is Shakshani Ish, but I also sometimes go by Konrad Frank. And I saw a comment in here about me going to Huna. I've been to Huna before, but it might be a mix-up because I do not know how to play the flute. Although I should probably learn, I guess. But I really appreciate that in the chat. I currently work at the Association of Alaska School Boards as a community engagement educator. And I'm just really grateful to be here amongst some amazing people. I work with students, I work with the community, I try to host dialogues in different communities of bringing culture into the schools. And as Pili had mentioned, you know, I do a lot of work with the culture camps during the summer around Southeast, especially Junos, but really grateful to be here. Ganesh.
Great. Thank you. And how about Heather? I'll let you grab the mic.
Atlanganashish, Khatsuak Tawasiku Yak Sakai, Yak Etsitat, Hakakewa Atsa, Johan Ganashish, Skake Aya Aksai, Chukan Shakunakawu, Atlisko Hasaftal Kanukusluk Nakadi, Sheet Kadach, Ajawe, Aktla Dutla, Khai Hittach, Shkataya Dusagun, Unakawu, Ganashish Plain. Kunachta Gachadati Ayagi Nachish Iiki Johan. Good morning. The sun has shined upon us again today. I come from Huna. My name is Legik'I. That's my born name. I also go by Heather Powell. I also go by Mom. I have 4 amazing kiddos. 13-year-old son, Dave Hoon, 11-year-old twin daughters, Wendatan and Shkatet, and a 2-year-old that may make a guest appearance, and his name is Shahu. So I moved back home. I live in Huna now. I've been here for almost 6 years now. I grew up in Sitka. I am currently working within the school district, and we are the only school district, I think, in the universe right now. I love to say that, the universe, that's requiring our Tlingit language, 2 years of it in high school in order to graduate, which is really an awesome thing. So that's a really amazing piece of where we come from. I just wanted to share that. And we do year-round cultural programming, and we also bring our students and take our students to different areas in the region as peer learners and peer leaders. And so we've been able to do that through the Hatuyayati culture camps. Currently, I live in Huna, and this is where my family comes from. This is where my grandmother was born and where my grandmother lays. So when we very first moved home, we knew that this was where we were going to be forever. So it's a pretty amazing feeling to come home and be able to teach something that means so much to you, to people that mean so much to you. So really amazing, amazing time. And I thank you for spending time with us this morning.
Thank you, Heather and Deanna.
Hi, I'm Deanna Baier. I was born and raised here in Dillingham, Southwest Alaska. This is where I raised my children and got my degree through the distance program. I am a tribal member of the Chugyeong Tribal Council, and that's where I am calling from today. I am a full-time ICWA worker for Bristol Bay Native Association, and I am also a part-time 4-H coordinator for Bristol Bay. This is my first time presenting on Zoom, and it's a little intimidating, but that's okay. I'm really proud of the program that we have established. Even with the COVID, we're able to provide distance delivery programming, and we've seen our numbers raise actually over this past year. And I am here with Jenny Sage. She's with the AmeriCorps program, and we have been delivering this program together now for past 6 months or so. And I'll let her say a few words.
Hello, I'm Jennifer Sage. I was born around Potawatomi Indian Reservation in Kansas. I grew up around lots of love and compassion and knowing my community. I am a mother of 5. I have 11 grandchildren. I work with SPED kids. I work with a left brain, right brain curriculum. I've followed Deanna around for the last 6 years with 4-H and decided to come on with AmeriCorps and see some new goals and some dreams that we both had, and being able to serve many of our villages and hitting a couple places in the lower 48 already. We know that our culture is important here. This is my home. I've been here 11 years and I plan on always being here. But I definitely enjoy this opportunity and being a homeschool mother for the last 30 years and being able to work with SPED has been an amazing opportunity. I love the kids here. I love the students here. I love the adults that I'm surrounded by, and I get to work with one of my best friends. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So I'm gonna, our first question for the panelists is why? Why is it important to incorporate or to embed or to reflect the local Alaska Native culture in our after school and or in our summer programming? And what happens when we do this? And why don't I begin here with, I'll begin with Heather.
In my community of Huna, we have about 90% of our students come from Tlingit descendancy. In the past, I worked for my tribe in Sitka tribe, where my grandfather's from. I worked for them for 21 years. And when I left the community of Sitka, I was the director of education for the tribe. And we had a community that had, 4,000 students, and they came from all different types of descendancy. And I think it was a really important thing that diversity is really important. That was a little bit different when I moved back home to Huna, a smaller community of just about 750. But there was something really similar that I noticed, and that was the way that we taught our kids, and teaching our kids about the land that they live on, whether or not it's the land they were born to, it's the land that they have the responsibility of now. And it's the land that they get to care for and they get to walk on every day. And so I think that incorporating the lessons of the land, the compassion that we have for taking care of our lands and our waters, and really encouraging folks that come from any type of background to understand the way that we were raised to to have compassion about those things with our animals, with our waters. And I think that that's the importance, is that when you're teaching children how to become human beings, in our language, Tlingit, it means human being. And so that incorporates everybody that we're with. Huna Kawu is one thing that we call ourselves in our community, and it actually represents the land base. It's the territory for where our people are at. So our native and our non-native students alike are all the ones that are screaming from the top of their lungs, traveling for volleyball, or in the world when we were traveling, right? Or for celebrations, or they were the ones cheering from the stands that they are Hunakawu Aya, Hunakawu Aya. And I think that there's strength in that, knowing where you come from and knowing your connection to the land, whether or not you were born upon that. So I think that's why for our community, and from the findings that we've had as a family, that it's really, really important from the beginning, from a very young age, to teach people how to love and respect their lands that they're on. And hopefully when they go into a different community and that land changes, that they'll also be able to share those same type of standards that they set for themselves as human beings, that this is why it's important. It gives them a sense of strength and identity.
Thank you, Heather. I love hearing how inclusive and grounded that is. How about Charleen? Same question. Why is it important to incorporate or embed or reflect the local Alaska Native culture in our after school and summer programming? And what happens when we do this?
Masicho, for the question and the opportunity to speak. I want to quickly acknowledge Hilda Johnson as one of our Gwich'in speakers and educators over at FNA right now, I think, and the preschool program. And she's worked so hard all these years to teach Gwich'in language to children, and I applaud her efforts. Yay. Hi, Hilda. To address this question, I think, like the district's after school program that Julie Wild Curry is running, we need to honor cultures, all cultures of Alaska. I'm from the village of Beaver, which is on the linguistic border between Gwich'in and Upper Koyukon. And so I have that in my ancestry, as well as Deanna. And so I was raised to really celebrate cultural diversity, but to work to maintain your own language learning customs, and then respect those of others. And so we're very conscious of the differences in the community, and respectful, and just celebrate all of the cultures in Beaver. We also have Inupiaq who came to Beaver, and Japanese. So in our tribe, we also have mixed Japanese descendants who are part of our rich, beautiful cultural heritage. I think validating and acknowledging spiritual connections to the lands and waters, animals, and the air, and then also acknowledging that a child's life is filled with rites of passage that really are expressed through different kinds of ceremony, different kinds of ceremonial activities, whether it's school related or not. Like, those things are so important to know about. After a young man kills his first moose, or goes through a particular learning or understanding, it's just very important to be aware and recognize, honor, and celebrate all that wonderful learning that is so important to establishing the identity of our children.
Thank you, Charleen. How about Deanna?
Thank you. I believe that culture just it envelops all of our lives, and it creates so many webs to each other and to our environment. Learning about the culture of our history, of our elders, the culture of our land, relating ourselves to the berries that we pick, and to stories from our grandfathers. Culture is very important because it develops those webs, those relationships, and strengthens the assets, not just for the child, but for the community. It's within us, and it's all around. Do you have anything else to add?
Yeah. I would give the example of my Jessie. We moved here when she was 3 years old. She doesn't know anything else. She's been out of the community maybe 3 times. She fought to go to Mount Etchcombe this year. She wrote all of her teachers telling them why she wanted to go, and she was accepted. And so very proud freshman. So she got to go to Mount Etchcombe. All of her friends are Yupik, and she speaks quite a bit of the language amongst her friends. They don't see her differently. It keeps them close. They're very connected with one another. This is a close community. We're super close with one another. When one's hurting, we know as a community. There's that compassion here. That's that deep awareness of the suffering of another with the wish to relieve it. We've got that. Jessie, this summer, she volunteered for. She definitely took on different roles and helped bring our culture camp to even a better level. Even as a teenager, she took that responsibility, and she came right beside me and Deanna as a 4-H leader, because she grew up in 4-H 6 years ago when Deanna started this, started Fridays clubs to Trappers Club, and learning about the animals and about the plants and how to make oils and salves and medicine. Her dad is a nurse, and so she sees different ways of how medicine works, how medicine from here, from our land, from our tundra works, versus maybe something you could easily get it from the hospital. Yupik values here is big. We see it posted everywhere. She can name you at least 10 values off the top of her head. So as a 15-year-old and raising a 15-year-old in this community has been nothing but a blessing and an honor. And I work here at the tribal office, and I work alongside everybody that's here. And I feel that this is my family.
You think? Oh,
4-H, teaching this in 4-H and teaching this after school activities and programs keeps us all alive here.
thank you, and thank you for that example of developing youth leadership. All of us who just came out of Linda Chamberlain's session, heard about that, giving students that stepping step into leadership. And I think Shakshani Ish, I don't think we've given you the opportunity to respond to this question.
Yeah, Gunshish. I just want to acknowledge that I have my Tlingit sister on here, so we're a little long-winded, so we might dominate the space here just a little bit longer than everyone else. We may have 2 or 3 stories that we share per question, and so I just want to apologize if I go a little bit long in some of these questions, but I just want to thank everyone who has shared all these important things. It's all very important and valued, and talking about our values and bringing in our identity and who we are. And as my sister had mentioned, we're so connected to the land that we're on. It's so important to acknowledge the land that we're each on, regardless of wherever we are, whoever we are, just to acknowledge the history and the people that were there before us. There's so many stories that are just embedded in the land that we go to across Alaska. And my grandfather, Kashkawu, had this saying. He said, which means that everything has a spirit. And so we care for the land and we care for everything as it's a living being, because it is. And so we want to make sure that we carry ourselves respectfully. And the other thing is that like education doesn't necessarily stop when the school year ends. And so we got asked about summer programs, and there's so much that happens in the summer that sometimes our people at the school don't get a chance to experience. You know, we have a different harvest time. We have, you know, the ice is melted, and so we harvest different things. We do things together differently, and there's just an appreciation and a kind of love that you miss out during the summer times. And it's a great chance to not only learn about the culture, but also just learn that there's so much, you know, in it, and to be able to experience and understand why things are so important to us. And one of the other reasons that is really close to my heart is that like kids want to see themselves in their education, both in school and after school. And so I was doing a culture camp, Voices on the Land, through not First Alaskans, that's another group that I work with, but Sea Alaska Heritage Institute. And my friend Frank Tass had asked me to be one of the instructors. And so I worked with all these amazing kids, and I know they're amazing, but each time that I get to work with students, they impress me and make me so proud each time that I have a chance to work with them. They say these amazing things, they have these amazing thoughts. They're so creative and they're so intelligent and so precious. And one of the things that we did together was we had them watch Molly of Denali. And if you haven't had the chance to watch it, I highly encourage you to check it out. You know, there's these amazing Indigenous writers. It's produced by an Indigenous amazing woman. And, you know, we have all these powerful people coming together to write a children's TV show with an Indigenous main character. And, you know, the first response that we got from kids, they were from like junior high and 5th grade on through high school. And when you tell high school kids and junior high kids, there's that transition into, you know, being a grown-up. And so we had that typical like old kids grumble like, oh, I don't want to watch this. I don't want to watch a kids show. And we were like, well, you're going to watch it. You pull that anti card and you just let them know like, this is what we're doing. And so we put it on, and we put it on the projector. And like, it's the first time I'm seeing it. The very first episode is called Grandpa's Drum. I don't want to spoil it for you, but it's a big tearjerker. And we're just watching it, and like I'm in the back and the kids are up front, and they're all like very chatty in the beginning, but once the show started, they were completely quiet and they were watching this show. And like halfway through the show, I'm like in the back just crying. I'm just like, ah, you know, like you kids don't know what this means. And at the end of this first show, they got all excited. It stopped, and they like stood out of the chair. Can we watch another one? Can we watch another one? You know, can we sing Grandpa's song? We all have our drums. Let's go get our drums. We want to play Grandpa's song. And to see them get excited, to have them get excited to see themselves on a TV show, to have themselves occupy a space that we weren't expected to occupy, was one of the most precious things for me, was to be able to witness. And we watched another one later in the day. And so that's one of the things that like why it's so important to bring culture into these kinds of spaces, is because we want them to see themselves in their education. Good sheesh.
Thank you. You made me cry. That's really just what a joyful memory of seeing oneself represented in such a space in particular where people feel like they've never seen themselves. Thank you so much. let's go on to our next question. And I think this is really the main question of our session, which is that other than explicit culturally focused curriculum, what are other specific ways programs can incorporate or embed or reflect the local Alaska Native culture in our after school and summer programming? So this is our audience. We are after school practitioners. We're wondering what we're going to, do in our programming on Monday. And so aside from specific cultural units, what are other ways in which we can reflect and honor and allow our Alaska Native students to see themselves and allow our non-Alaska Native students to understand and gain a deeper knowledge and respect for the culture of Alaska? Thank you. And I will begin with, let's begin with Charleen.
Thank you for the question. So thinking about this question, I came up with sort of a laundry list of resources to share, different kinds of things that we could share. The Fairbanks North Starborough School District After School program does a number of really exciting things. They, have different kinds of they have so many resources, and then using those resources in a way that's culturally specific, including the development of the Alaska Adventure Guidebook, which is STEM but also cultural outreach and different kinds of things, is really exciting. I think Dr. Demert has worked years and years ago to establish the culture-based education, really groundbreaking at that time, his education continuum. And it had a number of indicators that really could help educators to look at and see if any particular curriculum or activity was culturally relevant and sensitive, and if it was just sort of like, breezing through things, or if it really went deep. I've shared in this district with administrators that rubric, and they've used it. Like, they have taken it and looked at different kinds of activities and did sort of a little announcement check off of that education continuum, and is this going to be relevant to our children, and in what way? And I think there are so many tools out there that I think that is very noteworthy. I have a number of things, but I'm sort of distracted by the thought that did everyone answer the last question? Did Heather? So
I think I did. I'm not sure.
Okay. Yeah.
I don't know which question we're on, but I think you're going in the right direction.
Okay. The other one was importance of, and then this one is, specific ways programs can incorporate and embed. So yeah, I just didn't want to skip over anybody, but also I'm not too recent graduate of the Indigenous PhD Studies program, and in that program they really have different kinds of research protocol that are applicable. And so if something is, if there's a curriculum or something that is used in the after school program, I know there's a lot of canned things out there. The research sort of framework encourages people to think about respect, reciprocity, and that means to give back to the community. Does it have elements of sort of teaching kids how to be good stewards of the land, those kinds of things, relationship building, and whether or not we have the curriculum would recognize the importance of relationship to Indigenous people, relationship to land, to place, to water, to air, our place in the world around us, and within our kinship systems, and then relevance, how how does it fit into the worldview of our people? How does it fit in to the current political times? How does it fit in with social movements? And then responsibility, embedding that responsibility. Does the curriculum embed that responsibility in the child to be an active part of their culture and community and learning in those things? So those 5 R's, respect, reciprocity, relationships, relevance, and responsibility are very important to think about when you're talking about any cultural, any curriculum, and assessing whether it's culturally relevant. And so not a story, 2 resources. Dr. Demert's Indigenous Culture-Based Education Continuum from the 90s, just still super relevant. And then those 5 R's. So thank you.
Great, Charleen. And I don't know if you have your chat open, but I know there's a few, just a few questions right now. One question was, can you repeat that part about responsibility? I think that was an exciting idea. And there's a few other questions that we can get to in a minute. But do you mind just repeating that? Yes.
Well, the 5 R's, respect, reciprocity, relationships, relevance, and then responsibility. Responsibility is, just that part of the 5 that reaches to our students to teach them how to be a I'm going to say it, responsible and cultural and tribal citizen that, really understand how important it is to be, and what an honor to be a tribal citizen, and how do we give back to our communities, and how can we share our wonderful knowledge and culture and languages with other people, and what's our role, kind of giving them the opportunity to work through those things as young people. Does it really, does the curriculum pertain to development as sort of a civics lesson, or does it include opportunities for them to identify as, a cultural and tribal citizen?
Thank you. Thank you so much, which I think for a lot of us, connects to some other ideas about service learning, has some parallels to that as well. Thank you. Let's see, how about Charleen, also thank you for ensuring equity of voice and helping me to keep track of that. I appreciate that as well. We'll let Heather go next, just in case we skipped you.
All right, so the question that you have is, what other than explicitly culturally focused curriculum can we do to embed these things? Is that where we're at? Okay. So I had written some notes down, and I saw some of those things coming across the chat, which is really awesome. That means that those things are happening. For us, a lot of the things that we do in our after school, in our summer programming, even within our in-school programming though, we have new people that are coming into our community all the time. This year we had 8 new teachers, which is a pretty big hunk of teachers in our school when you have 136 kids. So we make sure at the beginning of the school year that we're doing, some cultural programming for them, that we're teaching them, why they have a drum in their classroom hanging on the wall, and what are the songs that our students have created, and what's the strength in those songs just in itself that the students have created. What was their intentions? Why did they sing these songs? Because they wanted their grandchildren to know. And that kind of ensured a healthy relationship for us as teachers, parents, educators, and our students, holding them up and saying, we value your voice. So creating healthy relationship curriculum was one of the things that we've done. And we've taken and embedded our traditional value systems, a lot of like what Charleen was saying with reciprocity and our responsibility to each other, our responsibility to our grandparents and our grandchildren that we don't even know that we have yet. ensuring that that future, you know, keeping close that relationship and responsibility piece with the world that we have around us. And I think that a lot of the, when we have these programs that are, here's this binder and we're going to give it to this staff person that's going to ensure that all of these pages are correctly taught, right? I think one of the things that's missing in that is the voice of our grandparents. So making sure that now's the time that we're making those recordings, that we're using our Zooms. Our grandparents are resilient. I mean, like, they're so resilient. I'm 2 hours a day, I'm meeting with my language teachers and my elders, and they're on Zoom, you know, and they're doing it because it's everything that means anything to them, you know, and so they're willing to do the things that are hard. And this used to be hard, and here we are, look at us, there's 60 of us gathered right now. When in March we were like, how are we going to carry on? We can't see our elders, we can't see our children, you know, it's like taking a part of your heart. But here we are, we're resilient people, you know, we've overcome ice ages, famines, all kinds of things, and now here we are, we're overcoming Zoom. So those are things that we can do together. I think that making sure that the world around us is embedded in those programs that we're doing, and that means the nature that's happening, the life cycle of the fish, the life cycle of the animals, when we know that our deers are fawning, when we know we're not hunting because our seals are pupping, you know, the things that are important to us and why they're important. I think those things need to be embedded into whatever programming we're doing because they reflect everything that we do. You know, and I saw something in the chat coming up that was talking about, you know, what about, I think it was an inpatient adolescent treatment centers and how to help prioritize and hold them up. Well, I'll tell you what, I worked in a treatment center for a few years at Ravensway and Search, and we would go in every session, my grandmother and I, and she would open up with prayer, and we'd teach them about sweat lodge, and we'd talk to them about why it was so important. And we talked about why it was so important for them to realize that they were a reflection of their community, and the strength that comes from knowing that when somebody sees you. When my grandma would go in, I'll never forget, there was a young man from a community, and he's from Minto, and we lived there for a few years growing up. My dad's from Ruby, and so we had this family member that had come down, and my grandma took one look at him. She goes, "Oh, are you Neil and Geraldine's grandson?" And the look on his face was kind of scared. He was like, "Oh," and she goes, "Oh, baby," and she put her hand under his chin. And I'll never forget, like, the release of him. You know, he laid his chin in her hand and she hugged him, and all of a sudden there was this bond, and it was that forever bond. You know, when my grandma passed away, he sent down smoked moose skin moccasins to put on her for her final journey. Those things are meaningful. Those things are something that you teach from your heart. And if we can embed those types of learnings and those types of lessons in the things that we're doing, because we already know that, like, our classrooms when we're teaching during school are an extension into the home. But how cool would it be to have the home be the extension into the classroom, right? Those things we're learning at home, the love, the kindness, the compassion. I mean, like, let's just flip that on its head and turn it back to where we're teaching in the school the things that are important for us, because they are our priority. So, Chish, thank you.
Thank you, Heather. I'm going to ask, I know we're getting short on time, maybe either Deanna or, I'm sorry, I forgot your partner's name. Yeah, one of you might want to address this question. Why is it important to, I'm sorry, other than explicit culturally focused curriculum, what are other specific ways that we can embed or incorporate or reflect our local Alaska Native culture and programming?
So in our clubs and in our activities, we welcome everyone that wants to learn. We share freely, you know, our old traditional ways, our stories, our recipes. We want them to go on forever. So, you know, we don't discriminate. We share with everyone, and that's part of our values. We also stress respecting each other. But here in Bristol Bay, we have culture clubs and activities, but we also provide other activities such as STEM club and Lego, dance and movement, ballet. And so some of the ways that we've embedded our culture is, for instance, our ballet kids danced to Bamya and created a dance all decked out in gusbucks and headdresses and dance fans, and did a few numbers to the band Bamya, which was very well received within our community. We have Lego Club, and our Lego Club, the kids they get kits, Lego kits to put together. And oftentimes they're kits of otters or bears or moose. We do Lego challenges such as create a vehicle that runs on snow with Legos. So we embed our culture, but also our environment. In our STEM club, we've taught kids how to identify local medicinal plants. We've made lotions and muscle rubs. In STEM, we've also cooked. We use local food to cook with and experiment with. Of course, we have trapping club, and so the kids learn how to trap our local animals. We have the culture club right now, and we provide 3 different levels. The Makarak level is for the little guys. Then the next level is the Tantu. And the final level, which is the high school and middle schoolers, are the Tagulak. And so that's rabbit and caribou and bear. Some of the activities we challenge our culture club kids to do are to interview the elders, to create dance fans and drums. And we provide all the materials for these in our kits. We miss dearly seeing the kids every week, and having them gather and do these activities. With the COVID, that's just not possible. So we've created these kits, and we send them out every month. So the kids get a Lego kit the first week of the month. The second week of the month, they get a STEM kit. The third week, they get a culture kit. And we supplement our need to see and interact with the kids with hearing the stories from the parents, and how well things are going, and trying to encourage parents to send us pictures so that we can post them and enjoy and participate in the activities as well. In doing this distance, we have been able to outreach far more than in the past. In the past, maybe we would reach 2 or 3, 4 communities a year, just because of traveling and being there. And now we're reaching about 10 to 15 communities within Bristol Bay, and providing these activities for multiple youth. So Jenny, did you have anything?
I had a group of culinary students. Now my middle schoolers and my high schoolers. These are my high schoolers that are going out and making sure that our elders and those that don't have food have something, whether it's a goose or a duck or ptarmigan, or they just got, my son and his friend, they went out, there's 15, 16, 17-year-olds going out getting their moose. But before they do anything, they give the best parts to their elders before they do anything else. And it's amazing to watch them grow, these young men and women. And it's because they started with one group of something and was able to make it into something even more. They sit down and they're seeing our elders, and they're seeing them in a different light, and our elders are seeing our youth in a different light. and to watch, not because they do it for praise, but because there's a connection there. And to watch that, it's always growing. I think Deanna said most everything I was going to say anyways on my papers. So, you know, it's all good. Tag team.
Great, thank you. And I think Shakshani Ish, I think we haven't passed this question to you yet.
Yeah, goodness, sheesh. I'm just loving all the points being made here. I really appreciate everyone's words filling the space. I think for like one of the things about bringing culture other than specific programs is just really heavy on the relationships. I'm really big on connecting myself. I really missing that piece of connecting in person, hugs, and going through and to these larger events, these big gatherings, our cultural gatherings. I was over at Tribal Assembly one time, and I was like, I just went over there just to say hi to everyone during my lunch, and I was like shaking everyone's hand, giving hugs and everything. And then I got to one of my elders who had passed on, Grandma Selena, and I got to her and I gave her a big hug, and I was so happy to see her. And she was like, "Oh, are you running?" And she thought I was running for a delegate just because of how many people I was saying hi to. And so, like, you know, relationships are such a big thing for us. And so, you know, like taking the time to be able to learn and use the student's language. I was over in Aotearoa in New Zealand, and I was learning how to read their language. And when we got to go into a lot of their immersion schools. It's a beautiful place, beautiful kids, beautiful culture, amazing people. And I was in one of the classrooms and I sat down with one of them and I was reading what they wrote, and it was all in Te Aro Maori. And so I said what was on their paper, and they looked back at me and they just smiled real big. They're like, yes. And so like giving them those to have someone who's a visitor to try and pronounce their language made them happy enough to acknowledge that connection, that immediate connection right there. And so to have something like that, you know, is one of the ways that you can build that relationship and just make them, you know, feel really proud of who they are, is just making the effort, the respectful effort to try to learn about them. And also like being in the community itself. I know right now it's really difficult, but to just like be in spaces that, you know, students may not see their teachers and their after school programs, and just like being in a ku'i, figuring out like, hey, can I participate in this? Can I attend the tribal meeting? And just making sure that our kids see their teachers making an effort to be community members, because once you're in a community, you're no longer just a teacher. You're no longer just a teacher's aide. You're no longer just an administrator or a superintendent. You're a community member. And every person who has an occupation in this community also has many other roles in the community. They may be, you know, they may be the tribal president. Also, they may work for the fire department. They may also be the Nakani of a ku'i. And so, you know, just making sure that our kids see their teachers being active community members as well. And so, and taking an interest into who they are. And, you know, one of the things that I found really beautiful that this job allows me to do is I get to travel. Or I used to. I'm looking forward to the day where I can, like, you know, click on that buy ticket and use the miles that's been sitting there for a year. But I got to go to like places like, you know, in the interior. I got to go to the West Coast. And when I was in Rampart, you know, this beautiful community, and I just absolutely love the people in each community. They were telling me a story about how they didn't have any song or dance for like 2 or 3 years. And they applied for a grant through First Alaskans Institute, and they got the grant. They used that grant to make regalia. And once they made their regalia, they restarted their dance program 3 years later. And it was that year, I believe, that we were able to go there and they wanted to perform for us. And this was a group of kids that were from maybe 8 to 15, 16. And there was about 10 of them. And they performed for us and they sang and they danced. And you would not have known that they haven't practiced for 3 years. And that just goes to show you that like our ancestors are really strong and in our kids, and they're not, our culture is so embedded and so rich in them that you can take 3 years of silence, but they'll still sing like they have sung for thousands of years. And so after all of that, after those songs, after they filled the gym with their voices, you know, their kids came in, and one of them had come in with their regalia, and she showed us this beautiful piece that was gifted to her from her grandma. And she was so excited just to share who she was and this gift that she got from someone so precious to her. And so, you know, just taking an interest and just taking the time to listen about things they're getting excited about. They're excited about who they are. They may not share it in a way where it's like right off the bat, like, you know, talking to you or sharing it in a public setting, but just giving them the opportunity to maybe even just write about it, or just to one-on-one talk to you about it, or maybe just give them a chance to talk about it to others. And that's, I think, one of the biggest things that I found was one of the most valuable things, was just having that relationship and taking an interest in who they are.
Thank you. And I'm looking at the time, and I'm seeing we've had a lot of questions in the chat. You know, I provided our panel sort of you know, questions for us to discuss today. Of course, we've probably made it through half. So I think what I'd like to do is I'd like to just touch on one more of our sort of pre-planned questions, and then pivot to questions that we're seeing in the chat. Does that work for everyone? Okay. So I think the last one I wanted to throw in here, because I was thinking about this when Shakshani was talking about his travels to New Zealand, and I'm looking at our audience, and I'm wondering if we can address just, do you have any insights or tips for non-native instructors of culturally aligned lessons or units who, you know, are attempting to embed, or in a place where maybe there's no one else who is able to do, you know what I mean, this programming in this unit, or, you know, maybe everyone's trying to do something in all their classrooms, regardless of their race or ethnicity. But are there any insights or tips for non-native instructors? And why don't I begin with Heather?
Hi. Yeah, I was sitting here. I'm really glad you picked that question, because I was sitting here reading through some of the notes, and you know, that's one of those things when I'm really glad that Shani Ish talked about being a community member, right? You know, you see these folks in your community and they're invested in your community. In our school, and I mean, I know this is in a lot of communities too, you know, being called auntie is a big role, and it's big moccasins to fill, right? You know, I mean, when I think of all my aunties, I think, wow, what an amazing, powerful group of women. And I think that it's really important. So, you know, like in my classroom, most of them call me Auntie Heather, and even some of the teachers, they call me Auntie Heather. And I think, how awesome is that? And when we have folks that come out to culture camp and that spend time with us, we introduce them as, this is Uncle Dave, you know, or this is Auntie Hilda, or those are the people that have come and spent the time with you. And not always do they come from the land that you're teaching on. But one thing that I've noticed is that you will find the most unlikely allies in your community. Maybe it's the auntie that always comes in and raises her fist when people are messing with her grandkids, right? And she's the one that says, hey, you guys aren't paying attention. But she's also the one that's always at culture camp cutting fish. And she's like a professional. She knows what she's doing. She's quiet. She gets things done. She gets everybody lined up, and, you know, they're doing what the task is. But in your community, I promise you, you will find the most amazing resources. And for those teachers that are non-native, that are coming into communities, it's not always easy, you know, to be the new person on the block, for sure. And one of the things that I think has been really, really difficult in our community is that there's always new folks, you know, and there's always new folks, and they always have questions about this and that. But what I've found is that the folks that are coming into our community, that are working on our recycling programs, or that are helping to deliver our lunches or our school packets now, or that are going to Salvation Army and putting those boxes together for our communities that are going out for holidays, or those types of things. Those members are the ones that people are reaching to and saying, I see that you've come to our community to help. And they're looking at them as resources. So it's going to have to be more than just that 3-hour block of time set aside for that programming. It has to be a part of becoming a part of that community. But I can't say it enough that you'll find those aunties and those uncles and those grandparents in your community that you just don't realize are the most amazing resources.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Heather. And I know that also sort of reflects something I think Shani was saying to me yesterday as well. And maybe he mentioned this today as well about, not just being there during programming time, being there in the community throughout the week. That's a great, I just thought a t-shirt, be an auntie is a great, great thought for us. How about Deanna or Jenny?
Hi, thanks for calling on us. And I just want to, I think that she said everything that I was going to say. So I want to really express people that come into a community, people that are non-native, use your local resources. Reach out to those that are there, those that know, those that have been there. A lot of times we as Native people are humble, and we don't value ourselves or our experiences, as much as others do. So go out there and ask people to, hey, can you teach this subject? Can you show this subject? Can you come and tell a story? People are very honored when they're valued enough to ask. When I was teaching a culture interviewing class with kids, I went out and I asked the elders, would you be willing to be interviewed and tell your story? And most of the time the elder would say, well, why me? I'm a nobody, I don't have any stories, until we'd start talking, and then they'd feel comfortable, and the kids would start interviewing them. So my biggest piece of advice is don't be afraid to go and ask, and show people that they're valued.
Yep, I'm right along with you guys. I mean, the more they're in their community, the more they become part of their community, they will learn. They will learn how to clean fish. They will learn where to get some berries. They will learn who we are. I feel just about as part of the communities I've ever, is because of the people that I met and that became family. If you want this to be home, it definitely can be home. But if you don't put yourself into your community, you're always going to feel outside.
Thank you. How about Charleen?
So I agree with what was said. I'm sharing in the chat right now a framework that was part of from UAA's Principal Endorsement Program. And this is just one of many. Actually, the framework Managing Complex Change came from Dr. Mary Lippert. And it really talks about you need vision, skills, incentives, resources, and an action plan to see real change. So at a school building level, organization level, sort of like overall program level, you kind of need to have all of those things. But at this, and if you don't, you get a variety of other things, anxious, confusion, slow change, frustration, false starts. And I think I dropped the link in. Hopefully you can see that link. So there's a number, like that is really important to to make a program effective in terms of embedding language. Like think of it with, you need a vision, a big, huge forward thinking vision. We're all gonna speak our language. You need the skills. People need to know how to speak. You need incentives. We want people to be able to eat while learning language. We need fellowships or something. We need resources to hire staff and grants and whatever. We need action plans. So those kinds of things are like a practical tool to help non-native people think about program, but also like think about your worldview coming into a new place. Like I've had to think about that very carefully and really understand, am I making this decision based on my own cultural values or my own, or my own value system, or is it sort of something I have to do? And I just want to really leave the impression with you all, or the idea that resources spent remediating English are never going to be as impactful to Indigenous identity as cultural programming, language, songs, ceremonial things, spiritual connections. All of those wonderful things are going to be resiliency factors that carry me through, some challenge, whether it's academic, personal, social, whatever. Those things are going to be in my heart to carry me forward, not the remediation that I had is like for math fractions, So when you're developing your program, if you're just pushing, English remediation, all this kind of like Western, you're not good enough, do better in a Western way. If you don't have that in your heart, if you don't have a full program for your cultural programming, and your kids don't have it in identity and opportunities to express themselves, you're going to have a piecemeal program, and the kids are just going to not get as much out of it as if you had those things thoughtfully planned. So thank you.
Yeah, wow, Charleen, so well said. Thank you. And I think Shakshani Ish, this our final question about, do you have any insights or tips for non-native instructors of culturally aligned lessons or units?
I think I agree with everything that's been said here. I'm always just so appreciative to be in this space, and really grateful that people are taking the time to listen to what everyone has to share. I think one of the most important things is to acknowledge the history of relationship between Indigenous and Indigenous people in the schools itself. It's a bit uncomfortable to kind of talk about, but it's one of those things that we have to acknowledge and talk about. Otherwise, there's no relationship or understanding that comes from why someone may be so guarded when they're asked to come to the school, especially our elders. And so taking the time to understand the history and the relationships and the impacts that things like boarding schools or residential schools have had on our people is one of the most important things I feel like we have to do. Being educators, being administrators, and just helping our communities feel seen and acknowledged, and that it's there. And once we better understand why relationships may be so hard to build, we can take the steps necessary to how we approach building relationships. And whether it's like, oh, let's host this activity somewhere else, let's host it on the land at the ball field, let's host it at the tribal office, or maybe once this is all over, it's knocking on grandma's door and just having a conversation like, how are you doing, or chopping the wood for them. And so, just really making sure that we're acknowledging the history and the impacts that were caused by residential schools and schools in general. Because schools weren't built for Indigenous people. They were built to erase us. They were built to erase us and replace us with Western standards and expectations. And so you take all the language that we had of love and it was replaced with a language to hate ourselves. And so we have to make sure that we're taking the time to acknowledge those kinds of things. It might be uncomfortable and it may not be perfect. And I, have stumbled through having these kinds of conversations myself. And it's hard because, these are things that my grandma was impacted by. And so, once we have a better understanding and once we acknowledge the pain, we can begin having those healing conversations. And we can begin being more embedded and more a part of the community itself. Because once you're a part of the community, it's going to be so hard to leave. You're going to love the people that are there. You're going to be auntie, you're going to be uncle, you're going to be, you're going to be sister, you're going to be brother, you're going to be such an important piece of this community. And that's so hard to walk away from. And historically, you look at all these communities, the turnover rate is so high within Alaska for teachers and administration. And so when we go into these communities, our people might be guarded just because of that. And so, in their minds, they're like, to build this relationship, why should I listen to you? You're just going to leave us just like the others. And that's kind of a hard thing to face and realize and recognize, but it's there, acknowledging that privilege of being able to leave, whereas our students and our kids and our communities are going to be there and they're not planning on going anywhere. And once we do that, we can go out and we can go dance, we can go sing, we can go have these great conversations, we can be invited over for moose stew, for deer stew, and have these great stories being told to us. I remember going to my grandma's and just sitting with her and just watching TV, and she had a story, and she may tell the same stories, but there's guaranteed there's stories that I haven't heard yet, just simply because they're so rich with knowledge. And we can begin listening to how to take care of the land and have these great lessons on how to work with our students. And, this is one of those uncomfortable conversations and topics, but I think it's one of the most important things we have to acknowledge as in both Indigenous people and non-Native people, is just like taking the time to not only learn about all the strengths, but also the impacts that Western education has had on the communities around Alaska. So, good speech.
Shakshani, thank you. Thank you for reminding us to acknowledge, I think, historical trauma, and to encourage us, I think you said, to stumble through, what might be difficult conversations, if we want to be able to forge, I think, meaningful relationships. I don't know if you guys realize I've been taking notes this whole time. That's how I learn. So I've been like madly scribbling. But thank you. Thank you so much. We are looking at Peely. We have about 6 minutes. I just got a note that they're going to throw us out of this room in 6 minutes because they need it for the next session. So why don't we, I think Peely's probably been keeping track. Panel, have you found some questions from the chat that I'd like to offer the panel? And I feel like there was a few questions about resources. I think I noted, I'm not very good at monitoring the chat. I think I saw that. Are there specific?
One of the, the chat box is very rich with information right now. So I'm just wanting to make sure that I can go through and look. One of the things that we did have, Felicia did ask us if we knew if there are any cultural-based kits and activities available for kids in Anchorage.
I wrote a response to that one. I think ANTHC has created kits that's been able to be sent out and applied for. I think that also Cook Inlet has kits that are able to be applied for through the what's the grant? The Journey That Matters, Cook and Lit. What's the organization that does that? It's not Siri Corp, it's, I can't think of it. I know that Nadia works there. You know what I saw in the chat that folks were asking about was being able to provide services and things during COVID, and also being able to provide services to places that lacked internet, and how to do that. You know what I'll just do a quick 30 seconds. What we're doing here actually is starting today. HUNA just got its first cases on Thursday. And so we've been in school this whole year. We've been one of the fortunate ones to be able to be in school. We got 4 cases on Thursday, immediately shut down. Within 20 minutes, we shut down and evacuated our school, and 2 more cases came in. So it was a good thing that we did. But we do our school lunch program, and folks are able to come and pick up their lunch from 11 to 1. And we have a packet today that's going out that's called Legik'I Nachtuat. We're going turkey hunting. So we have pages in there that folks can decorate turkeys and hang them in their windows, and then we'll go through in cars and, oh, Siri Foundation, goodness cheesh, Amy. So folks can go through in their cars and hunt for turkeys through the community, a way for us to stay safe and in our cars and being engaged, and then take pictures of those turkeys and post them on our Facebook page. So we're doing family engagement packets in our Ziploc bags, and folks can just pick one up per family when they pick up their meals.
Thank you, Heather. Anyone else want to? It's probably our last moment here. Want to? I'm just worried we're all going to be literally kind of tossed out. Talk about any other responses to that, about a resource you'd like to recommend, or and maybe a specific COVID resource or strategy.
I'm just going to put a couple links here, and in here is AASB has a resource page specifically for coronavirus resources, and so they're filled with different opportunities that teachers, engaging with students from home, coronavirus resources for districts. It's tied to a few of our different partners that we have here as well. And then the conversation, if people are also interested, is we also have the Transforming Schools framework that is also has been released, which is right here. And so it's beginning to have those kinds of conversations, acknowledging, the history and the trauma impacts and relationships building. And so it's just an opportunity to, take interest in the community, the history, and building relationships, and, just beginning conversations at how to look at where you're at and next steps to take, and working with students and community members themselves.
Great, thank you. And I do just want to grab this last minute to say thank you so much to all of our panelists. If we can give them snaps, we can give them claps, we can use our Zoom hands. And also, everyone, please remember to fill out the survey. I think Peely popped it in the chat. If you make sure you fill out the survey, which will be help us for our future programming, and also puts you in the drawing for our door prizes. Anything else? Peely, am I forgetting anything?
No, I think that was great. And thank you guys so much for sharing your knowledge with us. This was a great lesson.
Minawahalya. Masit ciao.
Cheers, Takachuhan.